There was something here that nearly belonged to the gods. Humans had built a world inside the world, which reflected it in pretty much the same way as a drop of water reflects the landscape. And yet, inside this little world they had taken pains to put all the things you might think they would want to escape from. Hatred, fear, tyranny, and so forth. Death was intrigued. They thought they wanted to be taken out of themselves, and every art humans dreamt up took them further in. He's got a point, you know. Good evening, my gruesome little people, and welcome back to What Now, where we're trying something a little bit different in the way of programming. Yes, it's something new, it's something I hope you're very excited about, it's something I'm very excited about, as you can tell from my effervescent personality. Yes, it's the start of a new segment that we're calling Fun Yet Informative Rants. On the inaugural episode of this rantcast, this diatribe, this getting on top of a soapbox and waving your arms about madly in the air and getting up in arms about everything, yes, the inaugural subject will be escapism. Yes, I'm sure you're all familiar with this word. What do we mean exactly by escapism? Well, traditionally, all it means is to describe any art form or any action or any lifestyle, anything a human can do or take part in, that momentarily and voluntarily disassociates them from the real world in which they live for the purposes of distraction or relaxation or recuperation, for escape. What it's generally used as, however, is as a slight and a dreadful accusation against people who write speculative, fantastical genre fiction, because it ain't proper art, is it? Nah. I mean, it's all made up, it's not the real world, is it? I used to be an actor, you know. Obviously, it is not actually possible for me to know every person who watches any given one of my videos. Hell, I can't even see all of my subscribers, but I know you're out there. So I'm really working off of a massive generalization and painting with a broad brush, but I think it's fair to say that the majority of people who would come across my videos or watch them are part of the author-tubey, writery, YouTubey community. All of these whys, it's like tonight's script has been written by Joss fucking Whedon. Anywho, and a fair portion of them write in the aforementioned speculative, fantastical, and genres. We, as a community, we need to work on this one. We need to work on genre fiction, because it makes actually defining genres a pain in the unmentionable. I say unmentionable when I've just said fuck, a pain in the ass. And I dare say, if that is the case, that plenty of you have had your work described in such derogatory and infantilizing ways, in such a way as to suggest your work should not, and indeed cannot, be taken seriously, because the subject matter within any given piece of work does not correlate with the generally accepted and observable reality of the planet we live on, which is called Earth for those of you who are joining us from Alpha Centauri. In an ideal world I wouldn't have to do this, but I'm going to cover my ass all the same, and also it just seems polite to point it out. This is by no means the majority of people who write naturalistic and realist fiction. That is not the case at all. No. But there is a vocal minority within that group that likes to make their somewhat short-sighted, half-hearted, and, as I will explain in this video, cognitively regressive point of view clear. So here's what we're going to do. Well, here's what I'm going to do. You're going to sit there and try not to balk at the sight of my face. So here's what I'm going to do. I am not going to defend the idea of escapism. I am not going to try and reclaim the term. I am not going to dive into my multi-dimensional library and bring out examples of why it is a good thing. I am not going to sit here and be an apologist for escapism. No, 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 no. What I am going to do is I am going to refute its very existence. Or at least try to. I'm going to try and convince you that escapism simply does not exist, and that the pursuit of it is actually a rather dangerous thing, but more importantly, that it doesn't exist. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to wax lyrical until this unexpected English summer melts me and sets my beard alight. It's just as well I'm filming this in black and white, because I am at present a remarkable shade of red. But we need to get certain ideas straight before we can follow along with this. So we need to do a little bit of housekeeping, a little bit of bookkeeping, just to level the playing field so we know what we're dealing with. And so the first thing we have to do is decide just what reality is anyway. Hi, welcome to my channel. This is the kind of shit I like talking about. You can back out now if you choose. Still here? Right. First things first, this should be an uncontroversial opinion, but despite what certain trendy self-help books will tell you, there is an objective reality. This is no bad thing. You can do all sorts of an objective reality, like live in one, for starters. But it would be disingenuous to suggest a sort of solipsistic slash... Do you remember all those pseudo-philosophy books that came out after The Matrix was published? So if there's any of you out there that still subscribe to the idea that we're living the Matrix, well, how you doing, old timer? Fancy seeing you here! The fuck was that? But yes, there is most definitely an objective reality, an objective universe in which we live and in which the laws of physics dwell. The speed of light being one of them, gravity being another. I'll put that over there. It's there. We wouldn't have anything to interact with otherwise. Fine. Okay. Matter, energy, all good. Objective reality, objective universe, great. I'm all in favour. If you want to make this idea really tricky, you need to introduce some human beings. Which is also true of literally anything, but for the moment, objective reality will do. Is what you're seeing real? Is what you're hearing real? I mean, right now, in this exact second, I exist in your world, don't I? But outside of this rectangle here, do you have any evidence for my existence? Because what you're looking at is not me, it's an arrangement of pixels and rendered audio files. But that's not me, this is me, or at least it was me, it is no longer. Because there it goes, there's that second gone. But think about your senses. Think about how you perceive the world around you. Don't think about it too hard, because otherwise you might end up like me, and even I don't want that. In this objective universe, we are an imperfect, biological creature that has only as much sensory capacity and cognitive capacity as natural selection thought we would require. The limitations on our senses should be pretty obvious, given the fact that you're being spoken to by a man wearing glasses. But let's take sight for an initial example, because it's the sense we tend to use most. Our eyesight is bloody awful. There are whole spectrums of light we cannot perceive. We have 3 light-sensitive cones in our eyes, for red, blue, and yellow. Our canine friends only have 2. They only have blue and yellow. Compare that to a mantis shrimp, which has like a 20 odd, I think. Consider the W-shaped iris of the cuttlefish, which can see into the ultra-red and the magnetic spectrum. Some birds can see the electromagnetic spectrum. Consider the eyesight of a hawk. Our eyes are rubbish, by all accounts. Our sense of smell, compare it to a dog, compare it to a rhino, rubbish. All of our senses, our ears, naff, all of our senses exist for three reasons. Natural selection only allowed us our senses for three reasons. To work out, ooh, there's food over there. Two, there's something over there that would make food out of us. And three, ooh, she's a bit of alright, isn't she? Even our touch is an illusion. Press your hands together. Now, I know you think you're feeling your hands, but you're not. You're just experiencing the press of polarized magnetism from the atoms in either of your hands pushing against each other. So no human being has ever touched anything. Not really. It's just all the individual pieces of information that are projected on the screen that is our cognition. So really, in that respect, this YouTube version of me is as legitimately real as I am. Horrifying thought, isn't it? But then, of course, human beings developed language as a means of linking up all of these disparate points of view and being able to, by tying ideas to sounds that could be communicated, we were able to function as a species, and we overcame that particular limitation. Absolutely fine. If you want to take the words big and the words cat and the words fucking run, then you're going to have a much happier time as a tribe. All is well in the world of a human being. But there's a problem. There's a trade-off. Because as our brains got bigger and allowed us to behave in the way we do, human beings started living in this separate, abstract world, which was great. That was imagination, and abstract thinking was the great leap for us as a species, because we were able to not only consider times ahead, we were also able to think about things that either we weren't certain existed or didn't exist altogether. This kind of imaginative and playful thinking is what made us who we are today. You know who can't do that? Chimpanzees. You know who couldn't do that? The Neanderthals. Well, not exactly. They could. It's still going on, the research. They could do it significantly better than we thought we did, but I'm not here to talk about the history of anthropology. I'm here to talk about fiction writing, and I'll get there. So making sense of the world is our prime motivation as an intelligent and higher mammal. Here's where it gets difficult with representational art. Take someone with regular sight and take somebody who is colorblind and ask them to draw a picture of the same thing. The limitations of our own individual senses limit, and well, not limit, but drastically change how we see the world we live in. With representational art, you take information from the objective universe and you make it subjective. Can you see where I'm going with this now? I think you can. I think you can. Because the crux of the matter is, it's not actually possible to write reality. It's not possible to write reality. What a writer of realist fiction can do is create a very detailed, almost photorealistic facsimile of the real world, but only as they perceive it. This is because fiction demands the human element, it demands the imperfections, it demands the point of view, it demands that fingerprint, like the handprint on the cave. It demands that human frailty, because any writer who is interested genuinely in writing about objective reality would be much better off being a mathematician. All reality becomes warped in the process of viewing it. Writing about it, actually trying to interpret that information and present it in a way that is not only informative but also aesthetically and artistically pleasing, warps it even further. So the fact of the matter is, and this, they really don't like it when you point this out, all fiction is fantasy. All of it. We're just arguing about levels of degree. Because there are only two types of prose writing that matter. We can talk about genres until the cows come home, but the fact of the matter is there are only two types of prose writing. They're fiction and non-fiction. And there's a little mushy grey area in the middle for creative non-fiction, but that makes everything very complicated and everybody starts shouting, and maybe I'll do a video on it another time, or maybe I'll just assign somebody else to do it. That sentence completely got away from me because I want to move on. So, by the sheer good grace of our biology, we cannot represent objective reality in our fiction. We will always make it subjective. Our prejudices will always come through. It'll be reality filtered through the mind of the writer and is therefore a fantasy. Why do they get so annoyed when people start talking about ghosts and spaceships and dragons and the things that the exact same mental processes, the same evolution of abstract thought led us to, and is, to all intents and purposes, exactly as legitimate? Why do they get so wound up? Our history, our sciences, every aspect of human life and thought is peppered with the imaginary and the unreal. Plato's Republic never actually existed. In fact, the version of Socrates that is portrayed within this dialogue is a complete fiction. When mathematicians talk about imaginary numbers, when they require imaginary numbers to make mathematics work, nobody gets annoyed. When they start talking about paradoxes and things like supertasks and anything wonderful you get on an episode of Vsauce back in the day, nobody gets annoyed at that. When a physicist has to use an imaginary description, when they explain relativity to you, and they say space-time is like a rubber sheet and we put a big ball in the middle of it, and that's how relativity is. Well, you don't need to be a cosmologist to know that space-time is exactly fuck all like a rubber sheet. For starters, you can't cut it into exciting alternatives for pyjamas, and I speak from bitter, bitter experience. The question seems to be one of legitimacy. This idea that people use fantastical worlds within fiction to depart from, to escape from the world they are living in. So, legitimate fiction, as they see it, I think, I'm trying to be magnanimous here, is that legitimate fiction is anything that actually confronts the reality of being here. It must be the physical world to make sense of it. They're still trying to quantify and understand the human experience in relation to the physical world. And that would be absolutely fine if humans lived exclusively within the physical world. And they don't. So from that point of view, it's easy to see why that kind of writer would think escapism was possible. But if you recognise that the human experience is not only in relation to the outer world but also to the inner world, the noosphere, what Karl Popper talked about in his free world cosmology, this inner world of the imagination that we all communicate to one another with and we build countries out of, most of you are American. Your country didn't exist until a group of people imagined that it did. Can you imagine how the writing of the Declaration of Independence, or for that matter, the Articles of Confederacy or the Constitution itself, if people like Franklin, Jefferson, Adams had absolutely no concept of the imaginary inner world? Because things like liberty and justice and freedom do not actually objectively exist. They exist on the inside of us. So, when you think about it like this, It's very warm in here. I'm completely rambling. I wanted this video to be shorter than usual. There we are. So when you think about it, there are only two options to the slingers of the accusation of escapism. Either they need to completely cut ties with their inner world, they need to abandon the use of any abstract or esoteric version of the human condition, and go about writing, I don't know, history textbooks that has all the humanity taken out of it, or they should take up mathematics immediately in the driest possible way. I don't mean like Godel, where it's all fun and strange and you accidentally solve a paradox and break maths, or they can stop getting on the high horse about it and acknowledge that we're all writing fantasy and we're just arguing a matter of degrees. Because the fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends and comrades all, we can't escape. Ever. We are utterly and completely trapped being human beings. We can't ever get away from that. Even the levels of our empathy, which are extraordinary for an animal, can only go so far. It's just that the prison we're in is so much larger than we thought it would be. We're not escaping, we're going further in. We are exploring humanity from the inside. We're not escaping because there is nowhere to escape to. Am I the only one who thinks this shouldn't have to be said? Because ultimately that's what art is for. That's what fiction is for. Fiction is our way of exploring humanity from the inside. We can push at the boundaries. We can fill in the map of the noosphere. We can't get out, but, you know, the explorers of old knew they couldn't leave the earth, but they still checked it out, you know, because it turns out world is a pretty big place and every single one of us contains at least one whole world. So when writers get together, yeah, here be dragons, fuck it. And before this starts to look like I am flying one particular flag, I think I should point out, just to get a little closer to you, just to get a little intimate, you might say, for any fantasy writer, fantastical writer, speculative fiction, one of my lot, one of my camp, thinks that this argument is one of giving a blank check and a free rein. No, it isn't. It isn't at all. Because while it is not possible to escape, it is possible to stand still. It's possible to stagnate. And I think that is what our camp has to be scared of. Geologically speaking, humans haven't been around that long. Cosmologically speaking, we're not even here, all things considered. But at the rate of our own thoughts, we have gone very far, very quickly, and we've ticked off a lot of boxes. And we have been tremendously good at compartmentalizing our thought processes, of breaking down how we view the world. And the fact of the matter is that all of human art, all of human fiction, all of human painting, all of our science, all of our philosophical thought, all of our religious thought, the lot has been in pursuit of answering one single question. And that question is, what the fuck is going on? This, and you're one, what is this? What does it mean to be one of us? And we're no nearer an answer. We may never get an answer. I hope we don't, because I don't want this game to ever stop. The experiments need to be made, because that's all fiction is, really, ultimately. It's experiments and exploration of what we are, and we do it in many different ways. Look, here is an ancient Greek trying to work it out over a piss-up in Athens one night, and here is a really funny and heartwarming story about witches in a world on the back of a turtle. We're all doing... oh god. That camera fell over because I really should have said on a flat world on the back of 4 elephants on the back of a turtle, and Sir Terry's ghost came to get me. We're all doing the same thing. We're all working towards the same end as artists and thinkers. Look at it this way. There are a lot of different ways of experiencing, exploring, and describing the universe. And we can admire it all. We can get something from it, even if it doesn't appeal to us personally on a personal level. Did I mention it's warm? And it is necessary for our dynamism and our what's the word? Vitality. And our vitality as a thinking species to really push out and see what human thought can do. And if that means that we can populate this inner world with things that do not exist, that is incredible, because it can bring us together in mutual consideration and exploration. Is that not beautiful in a really strange way? Psychosis aside, I don't particularly like reality. I don't like naturalistic painting, for instance. I prefer my impressionists, my surrealists, my abstract. But that doesn't mean I don't look at a photorealistic painting and not be awestruck by the work that went into it. It just doesn't make the impressionists any less legitimate. There is no one way, ever, because we can't access that objective reality anyway. We're living in this dream, this semi-dream state. So let's say I get a horse. I don't want a horse, but let's say I got one. And then I got a naturalistic painter and an impressionist painter, and I said, paint that horse. Which one of them painted the horse? You can let your own artistic tastes lead. You can let your own artistic tastes lead you in one direction or the other. But I think at the end of the day, you just got to accept that they both painted the horse. They're both right. And this is what I mean by people of my camp need to be worried about stagnation. Because there is a temptation, a real temptation. I've felt it myself a lot of times. Don't get me wrong, I am as guilty of this as anybody else. Of when we want to write something fantastical and speculative, we just take pieces that are genre markers and we sort of pile them together and think, oh, that looks cool. I think it's because we're the most definitely post-cinematic writers. We can't get that side out of our heads. But we shouldn't write anything that isn't going in. You know what I mean? I'm going to wrap this up before I start to blither too much, but I hope I have explained myself. I hope I've at least got an idea across. I'm much better at writing this shit than I am than shouting it. But yes, to muddle it all down, realistic writers, you're one of us. We know you are. Don't be afraid of the robots. Don't be afraid of the mutants and the zombies and whatever. You're dreaming too. Come join us on this grand exploration of the inside of the curve of a human being. And fantasy fiction, speculative fiction, genre fiction writers, this is my lesson to you on the subject of escapism. Be an explorer, not a tourist. Good evening.